Well, I did say that we'd wait before weighing in on what the new quote UK Japan deal was, and as I had been saying all along, there was no way on earth Japan was going to give us a better deal than the one they gave to the EU. Quite frankly, the maths just don't work out. Why on earth would Japan give a smaller market a better deal than a much larger market? It just doesn't make sense. But hey ho, this is the Brexiteer fantasy world, and apparently this deal is apparently mega amazing. However, I always said this is why we'll wait, because you will start to see articles and start to see experts and economists and people who are experts in trade to actually look at this deal and look at it and just go, yeah, it's not really that good. So this is probably just going to be the first of many articles we go over this trade deal, but this is the only one I've been able to find this week. I'd be very interested to see if there are any Japanese views of this article. Of this, that would be quite interesting. I'll see if I can track any down. Although I think we do have some Japanese people watching this channel, so if you do see any articles, then please do send me them that way. I'd be very interested in seeing what that viewpoint is from the Japanese side. However, this one today comes straight from the Financial Times. This is the first article that we're going to cover this, and I wouldn't be surprised if there were more, just exposing just how bad this deal actually is. So, begins. Oh. So, the title is The Japan Trade Deal Commits UK to Stricter State Aid Curbs Than the EU Talks. So, it's not good right from the offset. The UK's new trade deal with Japan commits it to tougher restrictions on state aid than the ones it currently offering in the EU in the Brexit talks, potentially undermining its negotiating position with Brussels. In bilateral UK-Japan agreement announced on principle on Friday, London and Tokyo have agreed to replicate the restrictions on subsidies in the EU-Japan deal. They went into effect last year. That agreement prohibits governments from identifying, gathering the debts and struggling companies, or providing an open-ended bailout with a clear restructuring plan in place. By contrast, the UK has repeatedly told the EU that it must have total freedom over state aid after the end of the Brexit transition period, with complete autonomy over future subsidies decisions subject to WTO rules. The so-called level playing field issues have become the main sticking point in the EU-UK negotiations, with London resisting Brussels' demands for it to remain with the tough EU state aid regime. Britain's proposal to the EU merely require each side to notify the other of subsidies rather than restricting them. Its offer replicates the EU's commitments in earlier bilateral trade deals, such as the one with Canada that went into force in 2017. The government spokesperson said that the UK offer to the EU is based on agreements between Canada and the EU. The idea that we'd given too much away is rubbish as far as I'm concerned. An ally of Liz Truss, the UK-Japan agreement contains similar commitments, including transparency about subsidies awarded, consultations over any concerns of those subsidies which may affect the other party. However, the contradiction between the two positions has created a concern within the UK government. A person familiar with internal Whitehall deliberations said that the UK chief Brexit negotiator David Frost has raised concerns that Liz Truss as the International Trade Secretary had given more away to Japan on a level playing field issues than he was being offered to Brussels. One ally of Ms Truss said that the state aid elements on the Japan deal were just a standard clause in any free trade agreement, rather than a more generous concession. The idea that we've given too much away is rubbish as far as I'm concerned. Trade experts said it would be awkward for the UK to maintain a contrasting position in two sets of talks. And George Perez, a barrister at the Mochan Legal Chambers in London, said that the provisions on state aid in the EU-Japan Free Trade Agreement create some quite hard-edged commitments not to provide open-ended government support to companies. If the UK-Japan Free Trade Agreement replicates those provisions, the UK will need to legislate to ensure that British public bodies do not contrive them. So already, bear in mind, Brexiteers, I thought we were about, quote, making our own laws. Apparently not, because this deal breaks your very own creed that we have the power to make our own laws. No, Japan will basically, to follow this free trade agreement, we will have to legislate, which means we aren't making our own laws, which once again proves the point that we've been making all along, that Brexiteers don't know about the EU, how it works, or even how modern trade and capitalism works on top of that. So, there you go. But will you see any Brexiteers talking about how Japan is forcing these awful regulations upon us? No. Anyway, it continues. And this could also well compromise the UK's negotiating position with the EU, where it has not offered anything like that level of commitment. But some lawyers have also stressed that the subsidy rules in Japan's bilateral deal were still weak compared to the the detailed and invasive state aid regimes. James Webber, a partner at a law firm in Sherman Sterling, said that it's a concession of sorts by the UK. But if this is where the negotiations end up, it will be much closer to the UK's view of the world than the EU's. A government spokesperson said, "In our trade negotiations, including with the EU and Japan, we are consistently making proposals which provide for open and fair competition on the basis of high standards, in a way which is appropriate to a modern free trade agreement between sovereign and autonomous equals." And there is your problem. Equals. We are not equals. Now, Japan isn't even in our top 10 when it comes to trading or export. So why on earth are we trying to prioritize such a deal with Japan? It doesn't make sense. But it does when you consider this. Our top 10 trading partners, bar the USA and China, are all in the EU. So making a trade agreement with the EU really is and should be our top priority concern. Why on earth are we trying to make a deal with Japan? Well, this has often come up before, that this is trying to get a prerequisite into trying to join the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is going to be a deal between countries in the Pacific. Keyword, Pacific. We are not in the Pacific Ocean. And once again, this just goes to show you a complete backtracking of morals and what these Brexiteers even want. It's just complete nonsense when you come down to it, as always is. Brexit falls apart under the slightest bit of scrutiny. Just again on this last part, on a basis of high standards. So why aren't we and the Brexiteers lining up to sign up to the agricultural bill which they voted down, which would have protected our high standards? We have very high standards in environmental stuff. People forget that Britain's beaches used to be absolutely awful. They were full of, garbage, waste, you name it, they were full of them. It was the EU standards and regulations that cleaned those up. Have the Brexiteers made any effort to try and replicate those? No, not once. So once again, this just goes to show you the complete inconsistency with Brexiteer thinking versus the actual reality that we are facing. And this is, by the way, once again, is just the first initial, look at it. And it's very clear that we have signed up to harder state aid regulations than what the EU are proposing to us. So why on earth is this EU state aid point a sticking point when we've just signed more harsher terms with Japan? But this is just absolute nonsense as usual. And the thing is about us joining the TTP, this is just us joining another trading bloc that's halfway focused around the world, which will not benefit us. And by the way, they will, when they get round to doing it and properly forming it, if you've noticed anything of the talks at all, they are also talking about convening their own law court, like the European Court, which monitors the rules made by that body to enforce them as well. So, you know, but this is just absolutely insane, and this deal will it gives us nothing of what we lose from leaving the European Union, and no free trade agreement in the world would ever replicate what we are about to lose. And we are not going to be for long. As has been said before, we are currently the 6th largest economy in the world. That won't be for much longer. And if you talk to a lot of economists, it's very likely we won't be in the top 10 within the next decade. Because there are other countries in other areas where they're going through their industrial revolution. They have a lot more, natural resources to feed them, to motivate them, to get things done. And not only that, but the UK has to make a choice as well, which again we haven't really talked about, of whether we want to go with China or whether we want to go with the US. And both of those are going to come with strings attached. Because at the end of the day, we had the EU backing us up. We were in the EU of those 28 nations combined together using their combined, trading strength and economies. We've lost that. And as we've always said, there's always this nostalgic feel that we were somehow bigger than we were and that we could punch well above our weight. That wasn't true. That was because we had the British Empire, and for years, especially post World War II and the sort of decolonization efforts, we still benefited from that massively. Not anymore. And that's something that the UK needs to come to terms with. A lot of people really do need to come to terms with. Until that happens, we are going to be in for a world of hurt. But anyway, thanks for watching. Please do hit that like button and that subscribe button if you are new as well to the channel. That does help out massively. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link should you like to support the channel that way. And as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you all next time.